right, we can get started. Can we, everybody stand, please? We'll go through the drill. We'll do Pledge of Allegiance. Attempt to sing God Bless America. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above, from the mountain to the prairies, to the ocean, when home. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home. Barb, you have some inspiration for us today.
I certainly do. Wait, be patient. The storm will pass. The spring will come, even though it might not feel like it outside today. That's a quote from Robert Schuller. You can cut all the flowers, but you can't keep spring from coming. That's a quote from Pablo Neruda. And one more, especially for this weekend. Easter is the only time when it's perfectly safe to put all your eggs in one basket.
Thank you, Barb. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to go to our speaker.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for inviting me here today. My name is Susan Ellis, and I am the Executive Director of the Moravian Historical Society. I started that position in 2018. So today I'm just going to walk you through a sort of an overview of the organization. And hopefully we'll have some time for questions. It was hard for me to limit the number of slides, so I will try to get through everything here. You bring the slides up. That's us. There we are. So the history of Nazareth unfolded at the Moravian Historical Society's historic site. Nestled among these dozens of grand trees are two historic buildings, the 1740-1743 Whitfield House pictured here, and the 1740 Gray Cottage, which is the oldest extant or surviving Moravian structure in North America. All right, so the first question you might have is who are the Moravians, right? I know some of you already know the answer to this question. I see your nice sweatshirt over there with the emblem. But I'll briefly let you know that the Moravians are a very early Protestant denomination from Europe. Interesting to the story I'm telling today is that during the 18th century, the Moravians began a relatively short-lived period of radical experimentation with communal Christian living. Divisions between social groups and extremes of wealth and poverty were largely eliminated, making Moravians one of the most egalitarian, multiracial, and multicultural organizations in the Western world. Again, this is in the 1700s. In 1740, the Moravians arrived in Nazareth at the invitation of English Anglican minister George Whitfield. They began work on the stone house, but soon disagreements between Whitfield and the Moravians forced the Moravians to abandon the project. In need of a new place to live, the Moravians purchased 500 acres along the Monocacy Creek. Of course, we know that settlement today is Bethlehem. Around that same time, the Moravians negotiated with Whitfield to purchase the entire 5,000-acre Nazareth tract. And they soon returned to complete the work on the stone house that was completed in 1743. Of course, before the Moravians arrived here, this land was home to the Lenape, popularly known today as the Delaware. The Lenape are the indigenous people of the lands we now call Eastern Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, and parts of New York, Maryland, and Connecticut since time immemorial. The Lenape were historically removed from their homelands as a result of centuries of settler colonialism. So their tribal governments and a majority of Lenape citizens today are located in other areas, Oklahoma. There's a large population in Ontario, Canada as well. So this building had many names: the Stone House, the Ephrata House, the Nursery. Today we know it as the Whitfield House. It housed the first settlers in Nazareth and has served the community in various ways. It was the first place of worship in Nazareth. It was the nursery for Moravian children. It was home to the Moravian Girls' School for about 5 years before that school settled permanently in Bethlehem. And it was a haven for non-Moravians during the French and Indian War. It also was the first home to the Moravian Theological Seminary. That's where it got its start. This is an image of the first house in Nazareth that was built by the Moravians in 1740 as lodging while they constructed the stone house. This house, unfortunately, was razed in 1864. There's a marker on our site that denotes where that house stood. And then a second log structure was built in November of 1740 when it was clear that the nearby stone house would not be completed in time for winter. The gray cottage was constructed to be used by the entire community. I don't know if you can tell from this picture, it's not a huge building. But in 1743, it became the Moravian School for Boys. And again, remember, this community was living communally. So when this was the school for boys, a teacher, his wife, his assistant, and 10 boys lived in this building. That's always surprising for folks now with our McMansions, right? So when the Moravian Historical Society was founded, one of its first grassroots efforts for this fledgling organization was to purchase and restore the original God's Acre or cemetery in Nazareth. That land had been sold off by the Moravian Church, and there was, like I said, a grassroots effort to get that back. So this image shows the formal opening of the new summer house, the tower, and that was built in 1918. The tower was also used to spot enemy planes during World War II. It sits on the very high point in Nazareth. You been up there?
Oh, of course.
See your head nodding.
At one time, that was part of the 911.
Yep, call center. That's right. Yep. So during World War II, it was thought that Bethlehem Steel would be a prime target for attack, and so this is one place where they monitored. It's still a popular spot today. Beautiful at sunset. All right, so here's something that most people don't realize about our organization. We also maintain 8 other monuments and historic markers throughout Pennsylvania, New York, and Connecticut. These are sites of significant events in Moravian history. So I need to tell you about the amazing collection that we have. We care for over 20,000 important objects related to Moravian history, of course, but also Pennsylvania history and American history. Many of these items are extremely important. I'll just give you a couple of highlights. We have a large collection of historic maps, drawings, and prints from the early 18th century, featuring architecture, town plans, and land surveys. We have a collection of over 10,000 rare books, periodicals, and manuscripts, including community diaries and publications from Benjamin Franklin's press. We have wonderful paintings, prints, and drawings from the 18th century, including works by influential artists. These paintings are by John Valentine Haidt. The gentleman on the left is John Etwine, and his wife on the right is Janetta. They came to America in 1754 during the Revolutionary War. John Etwine was the chief spokesman to the Continental Congress and other officials on behalf of the Moravians in Pennsylvania. So for instance, if some of you might be familiar with the history of Bethlehem, the large single brothers house in Bethlehem was used as a field hospital during the Revolutionary War. That was due to John Etwine's efforts because the Moravians were pacifists. They didn't want to participate in the fighting of the war, but this was one of the accommodations they made, was to use that building as a hospital. Interestingly enough, I just said the Moravians were pacifists, but we also have a large collection of really significant early Moravian firearms. So including a rifle by Andreas Albrecht. He's the person who taught William Henry. Some of you might know the name William Henry, how to make guns. This image is of Bolton, which is the Henry Gun Works, Jacobsburg, not far from here. We have a large collection of indigenous items from around the world. Really the largest collection of Moravian missionary objects outside of Herrnhut, Germany. So on the left, the moccasins are from Alaska, and the basket on the right is made by a Lenape artist using sweetgrass, a plant considered sacred by many indigenous Americans. We have objects related to American history. This is a favorite of I see you nodding because you've probably seen it many generations of school children. This is their favorite. It's a lock of George Washington's hair. And of course, visitors to our museum can see a significant collection of early musical instruments, many of which represent the first of their kind made in America. So these instruments demonstrate the inception and development of the musical instrument making in America Really, again, just incredible. This is the Antes violin. This was made by John Antes in 1759. It's believed to be the first violin made in America. We think we have the first piano made in America. So the original instrument is up on the right of the screen up top. We had and then the instrument on the left is a faithful reproduction of the original. So we had a team of researchers here in 2019 at the invitation of the retired curator from the Metropolitan Museum of Art's Musical Instrument Division. We had John Watson from the Colonial Williamsburg Foundation and an early keyboard expert from San Francisco. They had a lot of questions about this instrument. They spent a couple of weeks on site. They took it apart. They looked inside. That was my first question when I came up and saw that it was apart. Yes, they did put it back together. While they were there, one of the questions they had was, what would this instrument sound like? And so while they were there, they measured everything meticulously. They went back to their studios or shops and created that replica for us that you see on the left. They donated it to us. And so now we can interpret the early music of the Moravians. To put the original into playable condition would really hurt the integrity of the instrument. So this is best practice. Again, through their extensive research, they believe this is the first. We have the 1776 Tannenberg organ. This organ is still playable today. This organ was built for the Single Brethren's house in Bethlehem. And as I mentioned, that Single Brothers house was where the field hospital was. And during the Revolutionary War, when George Washington paid a visit, our records show that he was entertained by music on the organ. So this is the very same organ. And if you hear it played in concert in our museum, you're hearing the same organ that was played for George Washington. Wonderful connection to history there. It's one of 9 remaining organs made by Tannenberg. It's a significant piece. So, as the third oldest historical society in Pennsylvania, we're actively contributing to the historical record with new research. So we don't just have a lot of old stuff. We're continuing to invite researchers in and create publications. And we've got a couple of recent things here. The Nazareth book on the left, published under the Images of America series, and Tracing the Earliest Moravian Activity in the Mid-Atlantic, a guide. But again, we continue to do research. We also are really proud to have a digitized collection that is available online for researchers around the world. This was due to a large grant we received from the American Historical Association and the National Endowment for the Humanities. It allowed us to digitize. We have more than 30,000 individual images that were digitized. And not all of those are online. We continue to add to this resource. So if you can check back, you might find something new. Again, it's a great option for people that are researching Moravian history or Nazareth history. No matter where you are in the world, you can access this. We're really active in the community. So for those of you who don't know, I'll just run through a couple of our key events. On June 1st of this year, we have our 46th annual Arts and Crafts Festival. This is a great community event. More than 100 arts and crafts vendors. This year we have 8 or 9 food trucks as well. We'll have live music throughout the day. It's free. There's kids activities. It's a great event. So I welcome you to come out for that.
I was there last year. It was
Yeah.
wonderful.
Oh, thank you.
We were invited, my daughter and I came.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that. Thank you. Yeah, good. We also offer a kids camp in the summer. We do 2 weeks of hands-on history camp. These kids are learning what it was like to live in the 18th century, but also through hands-on activities. And we bring in expert presenters from the local universities and elsewhere to present fun topics and workshops for them. We do free concerts on the lawn from time to time. In August, we offer free summer Sundays for families to come out and do a craft or an activity and free admission to our museum. We also offer historic Nazareth walking tours every second Saturday of the month. These are really popular, especially I've noticed with folks who are moving into the area. It's a wonderful way to learn about not only the history of the town, but the early history of the Moravians, which is, again, fascinating, I think. Biased, I guess. We offer a monthly music and lecture series in the museum. So every month we offer some special program on a variety of topics. This is just a little sampling from this last couple of months. And of course, we have a cohort of volunteers who help us with our activities. We also mentor interns from the local universities and colleges and welcome volunteers to help us out. We are a member of Blue Star Museums that gives free admission to active military members and their families from Memorial Day until Labor Day. We are a member of Passport to History. Has anybody heard of Lehigh Valley Passport to History? This is an organization of more than 60 historic sites and museums in our region. Really incredible when you think about that number, how much history we have right in this area. We do a program, an event in July called Passport to History Month. And all of those organizations open up their doors for free admission during that time. We're also a member of Museums for All that provides access to low-income people. Just need to show your SNAP card. And so it's one of the ways that we create access for everybody. So why do we do all of this? I just want to leave you with a couple of things here. So historic preservation is an important way for us to transmit our understanding of the past for future generations, right? So these are tangible examples of how people lived nearly 300 years ago. Learning about the past is, of course, always possible by reading a book, but there's nothing more valuable, in my opinion, about than experiencing a space where history happened. When you walk into one of our buildings, you can't help but think about all the people who lived there before. And that sense of connection that you feel is very powerful. I'll also leave you with a quote from one of our recent researchers who said, "In much of America today, public officials are turning away from the most difficult aspects of early American history. Institutions such as the Moravian Historical Society, which devotes its resources to understanding moments and issues that continue to unsettle us, are more valuable than they ever have been." Scott Gordon was researching enslaved Moravians in this area. And in our collections, we had, I mentioned those historic maps. He was able to find the location of where these folks lived. So that was significant for his research and for all of us, of course. So for 167 years now, we've been a source of pride, I think, for the Northampton County. And I invite you to come visit us. We're open every day, 7 days a week from 1 to 4. Time for questions? Yes.
Who determines what is kept at the Whitfield House and what goes to the archives?
Well, we're two distinct organizations.
Yeah.
So the Bethlehem, the archives is the official archives of the Moravian Church, Northern Province. And they are in charge of church records. So, they're continuing to add to their resources, from the churches are required to give items to them. We're a nonprofit organization founded by a group of citizens in 1857. We're not affiliated with the church. We're since that's for 167 years, an independent 501c3. So we still actively collect and people will donate things, but especially if they're related to Moravian history. Yeah.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Piggybacking on that, I mean, I know what the archives facility is like, and I know what they're.
Beautiful.
Great, well, I mean, as far as security and as far as fire, vandalism, do you have similar? No.
Well, we don't have that level, but we do have, of course, we have a monitored system. We have, a good security system that's monitored.
My
And we
point
have,
was basically, when you start talking about some of the old manuscripts and the old books and things like that, unless they're in a temperature controlled environment in places like that with a specialized fire suppression system.
Right.
They're not in the same.
we're working on a plan to mitigate that. But yeah, that's an excellent observation. And we take that seriously as well.
I thought maybe you possibly piggyback with them and store things there. That's why I was.
So we do have some of our collections that are stored there. Yeah.
Question here.
Since you have a lock of George Washington's hair, has it ever been checked with DNA?
Yeah, it's funny because a lot of the school children, that's their question also. And then the next thing is, we could clone George Washington. It hasn't been checked for DNA. If your question is legitimacy, I will say that we have, in museum terms, we have an excellent provenance on this object. Provenance is a museum term that basically means it's a record of who had the object and when. And so this provenance is pretty direct. A single sister in the Moravian town of Bethlehem, when George Washington visited, asked him for this lock of his hair, which is, you might say, why? Today, when you see somebody famous, you pull out your phone and ask for a selfie, right? When I was growing up, and probably likewise with you, when you saw somebody famous, you had an autograph book and you would ask for their autograph. Well, during the 18th century, it was common to ask for a lock of somebody's hair as a remembrance. So Sister Anna Rosina Kleist asked him for this lock of his hair. She kept it with her. She passed it to her, a relative who then donated it to us, documented the entire time. So that's our provenance.
If I even think about the legitimacy, I would just think
Yeah.
about the interest that DNA would show about him.
It's a topic for research, isn't it? Absolutely. Yeah, good question.
Any other questions? I have a question. We sponsor the Nazareth Key Club. Have you ever used those students for volunteers in any of your events?
I don't think we have. They would be great volunteers. My daughter was a member of the Key Club for a while.
Okay, so
Yeah.
it's something we could make contact with if you're interested in
That'd be
that.
great, yeah.
Any questions from our friends in Phillipsburg or Ken?
I don't actually have a question, but I've been to the museum a couple times, and it really is a great resource for the community. And there's so many wonderful objects there. The Tannenberg organ struck me as being interested in music to see that and realize that it's still actually playable beyond belief, really. But there's so many really wonderful things. It's worth a visit for any of you who haven't been there.
Thank you for that. I agree with you. Yeah.
Here, hang on, Roger, so everybody can hear you.
I'm sorry. I know the Moravians are prevalent in our area,
Sure.
and you mentioned other places, but you didn't mention North Carolina. I thought I.
Yeah, North Carolina,
Prevalent down there also?
absolutely. So,
Down there.
absolutely. So I mentioned Bethlehem is the seat of the Moravian Church Northern Province. The Moravian Church Southern Province is located in Salem, Old Salem, Winston-Salem area, North Carolina.
I thought that was correct.
The Northern Province, just to give you a point of reference, includes, of course, Pennsylvania, but Ohio, West, Michigan. There are Moravian populations in Alberta, Canada. So pretty far that way. Alaska.
Anybody else?
Yes. What percent, I don't know how to phrase this, but how many people practice the Moravian religion as compared to other religions in the United States?
It is smaller denominations compared to Presbyterian or some of the other Protestant denominations. I don't have a number on the top of my head. Do you guys know? Yeah. It's a million.
My head is about a similar number of Kiwanians. I'm talking worldwide.
Worldwide, yeah. So I will say worldwide, I want to say 1 million. The largest population of Moravians is in South Africa.
Yes.
Mhm. Yeah, but I'm terrible with numbers, so I'm sorry. I
And
can't.
the Moravians predate the Lutherans.
And the
And
Presbyterians.
the Presbyterians.
Well, I started by saying it's a very early Protestant denomination.
Right.
Yeah, they trace their roots to Jan Hus, who was an early reformer of the Catholic Church. And that predates Martin Luther by about 100 years.
One other comment about the instruments. My daughter-in-law's father plays instruments from the Civil War, and he's told me, and he's done it for decades, he's told me that and he has Civil War instruments. He's told me that when you play a song on a Civil War instrument, it sounds completely different, that same song, than on a modern instrument. So I was wondering how the comparison was with the organ, which you can still play.
I will tell you that I've heard that organ played many times, and every single time it brings goosebumps. It just sounds so beautiful. Especially in that museum with where it's really meant to be. We allow people to play it that have experience with early instruments. And they have told me that it is a different technique that you use. There's different fingering, the keyboard is different, there's so many things that are different about it that, yes, I think you do have to bring that level of interpretation when you play the instrument. And it does sound different. We have that, when we play it, and if you've ever seen it played, we actually have somebody sit and pull a pump to pump the bellows. So it's really neat to see. Yeah.
All right, well, thank you very much. It was very interesting, and a lot of us have seen some of that, but there's so much more that we can, that's out there to see.
Yeah,
So-
well, again, thank you very much for inviting me. I really appreciate your attention and your interest, and nice to talk to the larger group out there too. So again, thank you. Yeah.
All right, I don't have anything else. Bill, you want to ring the bell?